right, BJ, I'm glad that you haven't got tired of me and you are coming to my house and doing this with us. I think it's good. We talk all the time behind the scenes about everything.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we'll start with business because
Okay.
that's what we're deep into right now. And I want you to tell everybody, what you're doing. What are your main businesses right now? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Um, I'm doing a few different things business wise, but the main ones are the gym first and foremost. I'm trying to really ramp up my soccer training, and then I'm failing, but trying to work with Scott on building my Young Gentleman of Valor class.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that because even me, I don't know it all. I've listened to you over the years, but I want to learn a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So um, it's really a class designed to teach young boys how to become young gentlemen. And what that means, as far as my perspective of that, is everything, right? So it's basic table etiquette, how to tie a tie. It's a class that builds from one year to the next. I started it a little bit into middle school, going into high school, and I've restructured it to be all high school. But it starts off with basic stuff, and then it goes on to business ideas, learning a little bit about taxes, budgeting, and then we get into how to change oil, tools, various things that I feel a man should know, even basics of it, And one of the things I teach my boys is, even if you don't do some of these things, like even if you make good money and you don't have to change your oil, or you can hire people to do these services, it's good to know it just so you don't get ripped off, just so, it's good conversation sometimes. There's various reasons why, even if you don't perform these things yourself. And so it's everything I feel a man should know, and it's condensed into classes that are, well, and again, I'm restructuring it, but it's 4 years worth of classes that are, I think I'm going to do about a week as the longest class, 4 hours a day, 4 or 5 days in that week. And then it kind of goes from there. I'm retooling it, so it's still a work in progress, but I'm so excited because there's a lot. I'm trying to throw a lot into it as well, and that's what's making it kind of challenging, because I have to take some stuff out. I have to kind of figure out how it fits in and how I can teach it and present it.
I'm trying to make it better.
Yeah, yeah, and trying to make it to where I'm not doing everything. One thing I've learned about business is you can't do everything in a business to make it work long term. At the beginning, yes, you kind of have to sometimes do everything, but if you want a business to grow, you got to put the right people into those positions to help it grow and thrive. And I'm going to kind of start out doing that on this new revamp. And so I'm excited. I got to get really going with Scott and get it going so it can be fired back up next year and going. So
Yeah, and I can actually relate to that because as somebody who didn't grow up with a father figure in the house that was stable, I didn't learn a lot of that stuff. So you just talking about it, it's like, oh yeah, I could have used that, right?
yeah,
And it's always good. I mean, these are the future generation people that we're raising. That's what it's about. So for you to focus on not only a need in society, but something that's going to help the future.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's great. You just got to, I mean, your mind works like mine. You're always thinking of something. That's that entrepreneur mind. you've got to think of processes. So again, I always get on to you about the failing thing. You haven't failed. It's just you've learned lessons, some harder
sure.
than others.
Yeah.
But if you're not failing or learning, I mean, you don't grow. I mean, if it's always easy peasy, well, what are you gonna work on?
Yeah, exactly.
What's gonna force you to grow unless you're just listening to others? But nothing is better than feeling that pressure of, man, I got to get this right.
Yeah. Yep.
So no, I love that. So you're doing it this summer, or you're taking the summer off?
Yeah, I'm taking the summer off, but what I'm doing, part of the restructure in this class is I'm going to have a main course that I have all the boys go through. And then I'm going to be offering outside classes that can be offered not only to the boys that take the class, but to anyone outside of it that, that sounds interesting, I want to do it. So one thing is I'm going to do a father-son camping deal. And I'm going to make it to where, we all go out and, maybe it's just a long weekend. It won't be too long, 2 or 3 nights. And we do various activities, and it gets the dads out with their sons to do a little camping. We will do various things to not only have fun, but to learn, like fire building. And I can't think of one of the other things I was thinking. It's kind of a newly developed thing, but I'm going to have outside classes involved in it.
So it's almost like you're mixing a little bit of Boy Scouts in with this, because Boy Scouts, anybody that did Boy Scouts, it really helped. It's almost like you're turning the Boy Scout model into more of a business model that's like geared towards your specific thoughts and ideas. But that's part of it. And I think that's great, because that's something that people can be like, oh yeah, Boy Scouts been around forever.
Yeah.
So, I think that's great.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about how we got into business together, because we both have a history of like battling our weight and, our rise up together into business partners. So, I like to share my side, and then you can share your side. But, I always had this idea I always had this personal training company since 2016, 2017. But I had the concept of, giving a gym that's specific for training to outside independent trainers. So that way a trainer like myself would have a gym that I could go to and bring my own clients. If I don't want to work for that gym, I can be my own, trainer and run my own business. Now, a lot of private gyms or locally owned businesses allow independent trainers in. So that's not new, but I wanted to make more of a business coaching part of that, so we can recruit. Our main thing was to recruit personal trainers and help them learn how to run a business, and then have their own clients and rent it out like a barber shop does to its barber chairs. Like it has barber chairs, and you find barbers and they pay a fee. And then, over our past 3 years almost in business, you can see the pros and cons to it, but it's been great. It's been good. So I'll go ahead and let you talk a little bit about how you got into the mix.
Well, it's funny because you brought up the idea of it, and I loved the idea of it. It just made a lot of sense. And it's one of those things that there's ideas for business that make sense, and there's ideas that are good ideas, but they don't really make sense. And this one just made a lot of sense. You were training me at the time, and you just kind of, in our training session, as we talked often in those sessions, you were bringing up your different ideas, and you had mentioned this. And really, it was just an idea of, well, if you're looking for a little money, I'd like to, invest in on it a little bit. And I really didn't think anything past that. And you kind of thought about it, and you were like, you know what, man, let's do lunch. And it was like, all right, let's do lunch on it. And so then we did lunch, and you were like, I really think it might be better if we partnered up on this deal. And it was something I slept on it, and I thought about, but really at the end of the day, it was kind of a no-brainer idea for me to go ahead and partner up with you in this venture. And
Because you were looking for something.
yeah, I had just ended a partnership with a good friend of mine, Justin Vess, and I had learned a lot from that. And again, I use the word failure, but I use it in a good way because, like you had mentioned earlier, failure, losing, when I'm talking with sports, like those things, that's how you learn and grow. And so I always, and Ashley got onto me for the same thing, but that venture with Justin was a failure. And it was a failure in a good way because I learned a lot from it. Very similarly with him as with you, he was the knowledge of that industry. And I just came in with a little bit of capital and the want to help bring to the table whatever I could bring outside of the capital part of it. And with you, it was you. The good thing is you already had things set up. You had the mind body system. You had a CPA. You had some of these basic things, and then you brought the know-how, and it was just really a no-brainer. And I wanted to get into that industry anyways. With Alvin and I had talked about this. I wanted to do a bigger area than what we have, but I wanted to do a thing for kids for the summer that involved all sports. And so this is a little different than that, but it's still in the same arena of it. And so it made sense to me.
Same industry.
Yeah, same industry and same, getting into shape, staying moving, and doing all those things that appeals to me, especially after I've been training with you for, at that point it was 2.5 years at that point. So it just made a lot of sense. Yeah.
Now, in business, what I've learned, and not everything I say is 100% accurate, but from my perception, in a business, it takes a balance, right? You have to bring something that the other person may not excel in that's needed in business.
Yeah.
And so that I think, and you do, and I think that's where me and you have learned a lot together is, I think one of your things is you're hard on yourself, and so am I. I think you should be, to constantly want to get better. It's the people that think they know it all that hold themselves back. I think if we both stay on top of, okay, what do I need help with? What do you need help with? So we can balance each other. So, where I bring the gym experience, the gym business experience, which I can always use more knowledge on it, but I have experience with it, so I've learned already a lot. And where you can bring something on the outside where it's, more discipline or organization, where I really struggle with my organization, communication, any of that you could really hone down on while I'm over here feeding you the knowledge. So I think just as long as me and you are both trying to work on the things that balance each other, because sometimes I don't think of that, but then in times I'll sit back and relationship with Lauren, relationship with you, relationship with clients, it's like you got to have a balance. And any relationship that has a balance is the longest relationships, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I would say a big part of that balance has to be the communication of it too. And sometimes those talks or those subjects or whatever you want to say are hard to bring up or talk about, but they're always necessary in every facet of life, business, marriage, friendship, all those things. And so I think that's an area we've done well in. There's been a couple times we could have done better in this or that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there hasn't been a lack of communication overall. And that's what we got to keep that going, and we got to keep making sure we let each other know where our minds are at in various areas of the gym and stuff. So
I will say the last probably month has been so much better on my side. And that was just more of me being more self-aware. And then our most recent talks have really just changed, and the communication's better. And there's a lot on my part that I always need to work on. And you're really good about that, where you'll be like, oh, I need to work on this. I've always said so to myself that you are always pretty knowledgeable. It's, even though you haven't been in the fitness business, your ideas are not far-fetched, because you'll get somebody in there that's never been in a field or an industry, and they got these crazy ideas. Yours aren't there. Yours are right there along with mine. And at times you take my ideas and you slow them down and you make a lot of sense. You're always right there. You're a little hard on yourself. And I think you want to be more involved in certain things, which is not a bad thing. But I think you want to be so involved that sometimes it can mess up some things on your side. But I mean, I kind of dig that at times. It's like, well, at least it's not like I can't get a hold of you. You're never coming in. You're always there. You always, and I have to learn to let go a little bit too, and trust, and maybe teach a little bit better, and then delegate. Yeah. Because I have that problem, not just me and you, but with the perfected body side, with my staff, with even just giving Kelly the leads, I could teach a lot better how to respond. But, I try to give her the leads, and then I'm like, oh my God, is she responding at the right times? Is she saying the right things? And for the most part, she probably is.
Yeah.
But that's where I need to sit back. It's like, okay, I need to trust that.
Yeah.
But I also need to make sure I'm teaching good before we get to that point.
Yep.
Not just trust, because you could trust, not teach, and then it all fucks up.
Yeah, and you can't really blame the other person if you're not given the proper teaching of that, whatever it is. Yep. In this case with the leads and stuff. And it's always about putting the right people in the right position, but it's also about how you teach them on how you want things done. If you have a standard, that's why processes and what am I trying to think of? Processes and systems are so important, because then it cuts out a lot of the errors that could happen, because there's a certain structure that you built or I built or whatever that guides that person through to where they can make less errors in it. Yeah. And so, and then you can relax a little bit and know, okay, if they're using my system right, they're going through and they're following up, and they're calling on time, and they're doing all the right things. So yeah.
I think that's where a lot of bosses or a lot of business owners, they fail. And I don't like using that word failure, but failure is repeating the same mistakes and not learning from them, right? That's what I take as failure. If you're failing, it's like somebody who's been in prison their whole life and they just keep going back. They're failing at that point because they're not learning.
Right.
I think a lot of business owners, they struggle with letting go, then they do, and then they're disappointed and take back. And it's like, I knew I shouldn't have let go, but you didn't teach right.
Yeah.
And if they would that's one thing I think I'm good at, is being open-minded and knowing that I can do better all the time.
Yeah,
and
you're great about
I try to take responsibility. That doesn't mean I'm perfect. There could be times where I didn't do it. But I always try to think, if a problem, especially with PB, perfected bodies, if something happens with a client, a trainer, anything, if a trainer is always late and it's become a problem, or the trainer is not following this, that, or this, I'm not going to sit here and be like, this trainer is the reason why I'm struggling in my business. I'm keeping that trainer employed. Yeah. Am I giving that trainer enough tools? Am I disciplining that trainer? Am I making it clear? I have full control over this.
Yeah.
It's on me.
Yep.
So that's where I always try to think of how I could do things better. And it sounds cliche, like you can always do things better, but if you think that way, it helps.
It's the truth and reality of it, especially in business. And also just being self-aware and knowing, okay, I got to do better with this employee or with this system or this process, you are way more apt to succeeding, kind of like what you said earlier, that guy who knows it all is very less likely to make those certain corrections because in their mind they're doing it right. And they may be on 99% of it, but if there's a 1% they're not doing it right, well, how can you do it better? And being self-aware is always a big plus in business, and you've done a really good job at that as a partner to, yeah, you've taken the lead and you've done a lot of things for the gym, but then you've also been like, all right, well, okay, I do like your idea. Let's give that a try. And you've been open to not just doing it only your way. And I'm fine with that to a certain extent, because I came to you because you have the knowledge, but you've switched it up and tried a couple of my ideas, or, given my input some thought into, well, maybe that is a good way of doing it, and then whether we used it or not, you at least considered it and weren't like, no, I know that doesn't work, and, blow it off. And that's what makes a good business owner.
I love it because we do not have any big fights like that.
No.
You're very easy to talk to. And while no relationship is perfect, I mean, that is up there as with one of the better relationships if you can talk to each other. I could say the biggest thing with us has been a lack of communication at times.
Yeah.
And I'm at big fault of that.
Yeah.
Where I know, and I try to remind myself, and then I get situated, I get distracted, and I'm not putting enough effort into it. That's what it comes down to. Just not putting enough effort.
Yeah.
Once I did, everything flows better, and I can tell your effort is way up too. So it's relationship, man. It's a beautiful thing.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about your family, because I know a little bit about your family. I don't know a lot, but talk about after high school. I know you got married early, but if you want to talk a little bit about growing up and like your parents, and then because I know you have that entrepreneur mind. Like, I want to know what got you there. Usually it's through some kind of family mindset,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I grew up with my mom. My dad and my mom got divorced early on, and I was with my mom for, a span of, 5 years or so before my stepdad came into the picture.
What year was this?
When Bob came into the picture? I think I was 8. So we're talking like 89, 90. And he, great man, really good for my mom, most importantly, but he was a good stepdad too. We had our disagreements and our struggles with that dynamics.
Anyone.
For sure. Yes, for sure.
Stepdad.
Yeah. It's always, and my mom she loved me so much. She overly loved me because of how she grew up. And she was adopted. My grandpa and grandma, so to tie in the business aspect real quick, kind of sidevert, my grandpa was a business owner, and he owned Franklin Supply Company, which gave all the fittings and stuff to the pipeline that was built back in the day. And so he was very successful, and they adopted my aunt and my mom, and it was just kind of not an ideal situation as far as how they were treated. The dynamics were crazy. They grew up privileged with money-wise, but on the emotional and caring side, it was not so much. So my mom overly loved me. It's kind of how I'll say it.
It's a good thing.
It is, and there's detriments to it, but at the end of the day, you'd rather be overloved than underloved. So it's you take the good with the bad, and you take the best of that and you go with it, and that's what's helped make me a good parent, or the parent that I am anyway. And so we moved to Texas. I was about 12 or 13 years old, right into middle school, jumped into Calhoun, knew nobody, went through school, met Ashley, and then we just, we knew we were the one for each other. It was pretty easy. It was one of those situations that just, it was, and my faith will come into it now, because even though I wasn't like a big Christian back then, and my relationship with Christ wasn't there yet, looking back, I feel God in that situation. And so we got married. I wasn't too young, but I think I was 25. It was 2006. So I'm not going to try to do math right now, but we were together, got married, and then we started to pursue the whole building the family and having kids and stuff. Had a little bit of complications.
Is that before Emma?
Yeah, two or three miscarriages that Ashley had, and then God bless us with Emma, and it was funny because we took some time, and then we were kind of ready to try again, and we tried, and then it was all right. We kind of switched gears with how things were going with our relationship and everything.
Switch positions,
so to speak. Yeah. But what's funny is we did that, and I kid you not, it was like that day, that next day, after literally talking about that,
yeah,
she took a pregnancy test, and Will was getting incubated in her belly. And so it was like, well, I guess we're not changing our minds on that idea.
Yeah.
And a third was always a possibility until Will hit the ground running. And then it was like, two was good. We got a boy and we got a girl, and we'll call it.
It's a full house.
Yeah, yeah. And he was a handful. And so that decided, and I think for good reason. But yeah, man. So family has been very important to me. I think learning from my mom, from my grandparents, from my mom and dad's divorce, and how all that went down, and everything. I wanted to do it better, and I always felt that I wanted to be a father, and that was going to be a big priority to me, and to try to be the best father I could be. And it's come with a few detriments here and there. But
what do you mean by that?
Well, like I think it's taken away a little bit of stuff in business, and in the workforce when I used to work for Expeditors. But at the end of the day, it's very minor in my opinion, because it never cost me a job, or it never did anything that bad.
Well, it's like, what do you want more than anything? Is it, do you want that business that's a Fortune 500, and you're flying jets across the nation, and you're busy, and your kids are not getting the emotional needs like you didn't, or not you, but I'm sorry, your parents.
Yeah.
Or you're struggling with balance, but you are for sure, because I've always looked up to you when it comes to family, because it's like, you had your family for so long, you've got to admire that, or at least I do. So I want you to, that's been tough for me to find. And not that I haven't been confident that I would, and I am finding it, but it's more of a struggle on my end, and to make sure I put down my phone and the email and the text and spend quality time. That's why it's important for me to talk to you now, because it's like, you're reminding me that it's important. So it's interesting. It's all perspective, because you're over there like, well, it's kind of interfered in some business. which is true. But at the end of the day, when you're 80 years old, you want that business or do you want that family to help get you a little bit further to that 100 years old and when people need to wipe your ass and not just that, but that's just
No, I
like
know
a,
what you mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's like, so it's funny because we're both like fighting against the opposite parts of what we struggle with. And that's a balance right there, you know? So it's not that I struggle with family. I understand how powerful it is. So it's crazy to hear you talk about this because it's all perspective. It's my family. I'm realizing now how wonderful it is even for business. So I can see that
Yeah.
how hard it is,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I'm more successful in business now because my family. And to be honest, just me and you, business partners wise, I don't think it would be the same if you didn't have the family that you had. And then me getting to where I'm at, I mean, we're only the sum of who our friends are.
Yeah.
And thinking about having a business relationship with somebody who is single and wanting to get me to go out, I mean, that would have been hard for me not to go out, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, the only way we're going to go hang out with each other is with our families now. Like, we struggle to try to go out and have a business meeting, right? Because it's
Right.
always like, you know, go do the pool or y'all come over here, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But I think even the perception of people that have good, strong families is so much better for business than the other. And there are some very successful people that are single.
Sure,
And they just,
absolutely,
they
yeah.
circumstance, they don't, and that's fine. But again, I will always, like, at least in my life and what my future holds, family is like where it's at, 100%. So when did you become, because I know you're a very religious man, you're a man of faith. Has it always been embedded in you, or was there a time period where you just really got, you know, you got connected to the Lord?
So my grandma on my dad's side was Catholic, and growing up, I've always believed in God. I just didn't have that relationship with Jesus that I have now. But, you know, she would read me stories from the Bible. I even remember asking her to read me stories and stuff. And so I would go to church with her frequently, and then getting with Ashley, and then growing up in our 20s and early 30s, we would go to church pretty frequently, and again, I had that belief, but I didn't have the most important part, which is that relationship with Jesus. And where the tide had changed was when I lost my mom in 2015. It was like a ton of bricks dropped on me, just how fast it all happened when she got diagnosed, and then when she passed away. It was such a quick thing. My head was spinning in the moment, and for months afterwards.
It was you, Ashley, and Emma?
Yeah, well, and my son was just born. He was born a month, like almost a month and like 3 days before she passed. And she did get to meet him, but yeah, so all that was like right at the same time. And it was just one day, I don't know, it was just one day, I felt the Lord kind of convicting me and talking to me, and I decided at that moment, because I was lost and I didn't really know what to do, I knew the answer was Jesus, and that was when I decided to get baptized and start living different and living for God and for Jesus. And that's where 2015 and 16 is where the tide really turned. And that's where I decided to make changes in my life and go towards that. And it's one of those things that when you do that, when your heart's in the right place, there's so much good, positive benefits to it that it's just really a no-brainer, and my life is completely different.
That's so good. That's good. So I'm not very religious, but that doesn't mean I don't believe, because I don't know. I mean, anybody that says, if you have an atheist that believes this or that, I'm not an atheist. I really lean more towards science because I was not raised around that. That doesn't mean I don't believe, because there obviously is a meaning to life, and there's so much we don't know and so many magical things that happen. I know that I'm a little bit spiritual. I still have my grandma and my contacts on my phone, and just little things like I just, sometimes I'll be looking at my dog Piper and I'm like, Grandma? But, I laugh about that stuff, but I think it's so important because, Lauren's religious, and, she wants us to go to church, and when we go, to be honest, I'm bored. Do I want to go? No, I don't want to go. But I understand the importance of it. And even if I don't fully understand the importance, when I go, I do observe and I do think and I see how important it is to people like families and single people or people in difficult situations that are lost. And I understand that how big it is, and it makes me curious. I'm just so much into science that any scientist, the most scientists, I think there might be like 7%, 6 or 7% scientists that still are religious people, which fascinates me. I want to meet those people. If you're 100% into science, but you're still very religious, because science will convince you otherwise at times. So I see how powerful it is, and that's why, and I see how it touches people like you, and I love it, and I feel good about it. So even though I may not be someone that goes to church every week, I know that if I do start getting around people that do and start learning more about it, I know how good it can be for me. So who am I to say that it's not going to do anything for me? Look at how much good it does do.
Yeah.
So I think it can be a very powerful thing. And I love even how, I would say the Republicans are trying to get it more back into the schools. And I get both sides because I'm not emotionally attached to religion, right? So I'm not like mad, but I love how it's getting put back into schools because it can be good. Now, too much can be bad. My uncle was a really religious guy, and I remember it was all about religion. And I remember he had me, anytime I did anything bad or semi-wrong, he had me apologizing to God. So I would say, God, I'm so sorry for this, amen. And I remember this when I was probably 9 or 8 years old, like Alex's age, Gage's age. And it was after everything. And I realized maybe that was a little too much for an 8-year-old and my uncle was crazy, And I would like to know where he is right now, if he's still hanging around, but I just remember he was nuts. And I think anybody can go nuts with stuff, but I think a good balanced person that's very religious can be a great thing. And I love how it's getting back into the schools. And, I think the Republicans get a bad rap on it, and it confuses me. I don't understand how that happens. And, Trump gets, again, I'm not a Trumper to where I'm going to wear a Trump hat, and I don't look at anybody differently that does. I think Trump is a new direction. The Republicans are a new direction. And personally, I wanted that new direction because the other direction, I can't say that it was wrong, but I wanted new. And I think that's what half of America decided is new. And I like to lie right in the middle and analyze things. I think, and I talked about this on my last episode, I think every topic can be debated. I think with humans, everything can be, nobody's going to believe the same thing. With 8 billion people on this earth, you're going to have different ideas. So that's why I think it's beautiful that we have two big parties that keeps that fighting, that those differences contained for the most part. And so I think we have not balanced the system much and pressed this way. And so I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. Does that mean that's the right way? We're going to find out. Does that mean that everything's perfect? Probably not. Does that mean it's not risky? It is. But the other way could be risky too. Life is all about balance. And so that's where I'm sitting in the middle, and I'm like, let's put religion back in the school. It can't be a bad thing. And that, not just that, because I'm sure there's liberals that are like, oh, I want religion in the school. But it was a big push on the conservative side, on the Republican side, of putting religions in school, or that religion back into school. And then, you didn't hear the ABC interview with Trump?
No, I didn't. I heard a snippet, and I tried to go back and watch that before I came here today, and I couldn't, for whatever reason, I couldn't find it on YouTube. So no, I didn't get to hear the full interview on that.
Yeah. So even though now I watch Trump's interviews because they're entertaining to me. Some people might get mad about that. They shouldn't be entertaining. It's America. Well, it's still entertaining than not. So I want to see what's said, and I'm more inclined to keep up with today's politics and the current events. And so that interview I go into, and I like to think I'm not biased because I'm not a diehard Republican. Okay, I sit in the middle. I really want to see what Trump says. It's a lot of rambling of the same things. I want to see how the interview goes from the interviewer. And I think it's funny because podcasts are now the more popular news source for people versus old school. It used to be these interviews. This interview for me is a big reason of why I'm more wanting the other side right now. I'm more hoping that Trump can make a change in the positive direction, is because this interviewer at every chance tried to bring up something about Trump in his first 100 days that was bad.
It was negative.
Negative.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I'm sitting there, okay, there's a lot of these topics that are valid, a lot of questions valid that should be asked. Okay, so because you did this could happen. Can you explain and give us a little bit of ease? Sure. But it was everything.
Yeah.
Even to the controversial vaccines, where, COVID vaccines, very controversial. It got to the measles vaccines. And and this was my big turning point where I'm listening, and then the interviewer, I'm like, dude, this is why I lean more that way towards Trump, is because he asks about the measles outbreaks and how people are less likely to get a vaccine now because of the COVID. Okay? Measles are different from COVID. He's basically telling Trump, like, can you tell America, because the president has such a big, impact on, whatever they say people are going to do. Can you tell Americans that they should go get vaccinated for the measles? And he even said, Trump was like, well, I want to leave that up to the governors to make that choice. I don't think it should be mandated, but yeah, more than, because measles have been around for a while. Yeah, sure. They probably should vaccinate their kids. Yeah. And then the interviewer said, okay, good. And I'm like, that's what you wanted him to say. That's not how an interview should go.
Right.
So you're trying to get him to go a certain way.
Yeah.
When with vaccines, that should be up to the governor. I think it should be up to the governors, and you choose where you want to live within the United States, right? Yeah. Now, again, that's my opinion. That doesn't mean it's right.
Right.
That's just what. And so it was little things like that. He would point out certain things and bash, and Trump would fight back like he always does. But there wasn't that fair balance of questions like, hey, you've been doing this well, or hey, this may work, so can you explain a little bit about the positives of immigration? Or there was none of that.
Right.
And I watched the whole interview, and I was just hoping for it.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is why people do not like watching that stuff, the mainstream media.
Yeah.
It's so one-way driven. And you know what? If the news... the news companies are pushing that and they're just the little puppets, that's fine. But I'm not a conspiracy theorist guy. I'm not going to sit there and think everybody's out to get me, but I'm just watching, observing. I'm like, this is why I like listening to Joe Rogan. This is why I like going to a podcast, because they're more about talking about things. You'll still get a little bit of biased opinions or a biased nature to the podcast in some places, but it's just more of a discussion, right? And that's why I want to bring you on. So, I don't know what you think about the mainstream media, but.
Well, yeah, and that's been the problem with the mainstream media. Whether it's on the right or on the left, there's too much of a drive for their side of things, and that's why, like, one of the things I love Trump did was he opened up in his deal anyone the opportunity to come to the press conferences to ask questions and stuff. It's not just to ABC, NBC, Fox, and all these major news affiliates. It's to anyone that can go through the process and get through to have a chance to ask the questions, because it's exactly that. Whether, again, it's the right or left side, it's typically too driven one way or the other. And it's like, let's just get some fair questions on both ends of it, and you'll hear the better answers from Trump. I feel he gets a bad rap on how he defends himself, because he's always having to defend himself. Mm-hmm. And so he can get a little annoying with it at times. But when you're constantly on the attack and defending yourself, like, and he's a billionaire entrepreneur that is super smart, and you think he's gonna back down? No, he's gonna be feisty, and he's gonna be obnoxious about some of the things he's arguing about. But that's why him opening up his press conferences to anybody almost, I think was a good thing. And I don't really listen to Fox News, CNN, CNBC, any of those anymore. I listen to various sources, independent news people, podcasters, interviews. I hear straight from Trump or straight from Biden when he was president. Like, I listen to what they say and then what their actions follow through with, and that's kind of where I go with it, because I've never been a political guy, and the good thing about Trump is he's bringing in how the presidential seat is supposed to be filled. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be filled by businessmen, mm-hmm. by CEOs, by people that go in, they do the job, they leave the job, then a new guy comes in. It's not supposed to be career politicians where our government has been over the last 50 years. Yeah. And it is a breath of fresh air. He was the first person I voted for. He's been the only person I voted for thus far. And I'm just hoping that can that's where we can get to where, because that's how it was designed. And that's what I love about it. You like him or you love him. I mean, you like him or you hate him. He's doing the system how it was made to be done, and I think he's bringing a lot of good stuff in. Personally, do I agree with him 100%? No, I don't. Not at all. But I like more of what he's doing than the other way around. And that's the big thing.
As long as you're open-minded about the other side. And,
For sure.
Here's my thing. I have a lot of very smart friends that are liberals. And, all their arguments are so valid. They're very valid. As some of my smartest friends, but I can't talk to them about this. They're too emotional about it. And they make you feel dumb. And they could be over there, well, you are dumb. Well, you got to be open-minded to how people think. Not everybody wants to be tied up into the deep weeds of politics. Okay?
Right.
We want to look for somebody who is a strong leader, powerful leader, someone. I mean, that's human nature. Do we want the person that's always going to do everything politically correct? We can, but that may not always be the right route.
Or the best thing for
And maybe
our
for
country.
them, because it emotionally impacts them, because it personally impacts their life. And I can understand that. I'm not ever going to debate somebody that's on one side versus the other, because abortion, the Ukraine war. I mean, really, I used to be all about helping out Ukraine because Russia, big bad Russia, right? You never know, man. You never know. I think the killing needs to stop. There's consequences to that. You can argue both ways. The Israel and Hamas war, and it's like, that's hard. That's it. I think that's a hatred that will never go away between the two groups. Ever. So what do I look for personally? I'm not trying to tell you or anybody else. What do I look for personally is, okay, if one side put down all their guns, what would the other side do? That's the side I'm going to lean towards. That doesn't mean I'm in full support of that, but that's the side I'm going to lean towards. And that would be Israel, because one side is deep rooted into religion hate for another side. Now, maybe it's warranted. I don't know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if one side put all their weapons down, that doesn't mean some Israelis are not radical and bad.
Right.
And I'm not saying what they're doing is good.
Right.
You can't. It's so complicated.
There's a lot to it.
But I think, if I'm going to lean one side, okay, I want that side to, work something out, because that side's not being realistic with today's times.
Yeah.
The Ukraine war, I've flipped on that to where I just want it to stop. Does that make it right? Where Russia can be like, hey, we're just going to, give us this land, and then Ukraine just has to back down. Is that right? No, because Russia invaded them.
Right, but is that our problem? Should that be our problem? That's my stance.
That's a controversial take, where, hey, maybe this balance needs to shift more towards us taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
I know America stands for helping everybody out.
Yeah.
And so maybe we don't need to stay this way, but I think for now, in my opinion, for what I know and my reality and my family, I think it's best we back off of Russia, big bad Russia. Are they evil? Probably. Is Putin evil? I mean, it's all relative. Like, it's all, if you live in Russia, USA is evil. Yeah. So it's, again, it's one of those, like, I'm going to push for balance.
Yeah.
Okay. If we've been one way and we've been spending a lot of money and the war is getting worse, because it is it weakening Russia? Sure. But are people still dying, and are they probably still going to beat Ukraine? Yeah. So why not try to make some peace? So that's where I'm not right. I want balance.
Your stance on it. Yeah.
Push back.
And that's where I'm at. Like, I feel like, things have been done a certain way for so long now, and there's no resolve. So let's do something different. Let's stop pouring into these countries with our money. Let's help ourselves out. Let's help, the people of North Carolina were hurting for a long time. Mm-hmm. They're finally getting taken care of. Like all these natural disasters and all these events that have happened here, like, let's take care of us first.
Yeah.
Then, I don't mind helping other countries. We're a powerful country, a powerful nation, and there's something good to helping other people in other countries, but it's that old adage, I can't take care of you if I'm not taking care of myself.
There you go.
And that's a big one. Like, let's take care of us here, and then we can talk about reaching out and helping other people.
And that doesn't mean you're right or I'm right. Like, right. But it is a valid point to make.
Yeah.
So I know we got to go soon, but I wanted to get to this topic. Is it one gorilla that wins or 100 men?
Okay, so I have recently flopped on this.
What did you start with?
I started with the 100 men. And my reasoning behind it was, listen, gorillas are not aggressive creatures. They don't hunt. They eat plants. They're not meat eaters. They don't... they're not aggressive at nature. And I heard a fact about them quite a while back about regarding that, and that kind of stuck with me. And we are aggressive. we are very aggressive. And so I was like, I think 100 men, and if it's going by what is going around there, it's 100 average men. So it's not even like 100 of the rocks or any
Yeah.
big dude. It's average men. So you take that in account too. But I had a guy that I love to listen to on TikTok, and he brought up some valid points that swayed me the other way. And that is, first off, gorillas are, like, if you take into consideration their muscle mass, their skin, their hide, like, is thick, and they don't fight, or they don't hunt, and they don't do aggressive things like that, but they do fight each other. Mm-hmm. And that's what really persuaded me, because if they're fighting each other, there's something to that that's going to make them, tough at nature to handle like 100 men coming at them. And so then you got to consider their fangs and their teeth and things like that. So I think if you really were really just constantly attacking one gorilla, and he really just unleashed it, I think he probably is taking out 100 men. I think he's pretty damaged by the end of it. I think there would be some...
It's interesting.
But yeah, because at first I really didn't... I thought 100 men could take him. But I'm persuaded that I think it would be kind of close, but I think that gorilla wins.
Dude, 100 men. I think 10 men could get the job done.
You think?
I know one-on-one would not.
Yeah, definitely not. No.
But I think 10 men, and that's my argument, because humans are more intelligent. That doesn't mean that they're gonna. Now, it all circumstance, right? Like, what are the rules? But if it's just generally speaking, 10 men can take down a gorilla. You got to think of how smart, how intelligent. You got to give humans a little bit more. Because people are so driven based off of the physicality of it.
Yeah.
Obviously,
yeah.
If me and a gorilla went, but you got to think of the eye gouging,
right.
the low blows that you're going to go to.
Right.
And if you can manipulate your environment, shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 10 men. I would put money on 10 men all day. If you give me 100 men, man, if all 100 men couldn't do it, I would not want to know where these men came from.
Yeah.
So that's my thing, man.
Yeah.
Is humans are so intelligent. I don't think it's a question to me.
Yeah.
Like, what's gonna win?
Yeah, and that's a fair point too. If you take the aggression that we have with the intelligence, that brings up a really good argument, for
all
sure
day.
on it. It's
you start making booby traps, man. Hey, that's a good. I don't know if we can get away with that, but a TV show would be awesome with that, like reality.
Yeah.
But
that'd be fun. Yeah.
But I just, if you can manipulate the environment, it's over. Even if you couldn't, it's if I was in a fight with a gorilla, I'm reaching for the eyes.
Yeah.
I'm reaching for something that's
definitely going for the eyes.
I mean, you just need 10 guys to make that.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yeah, so. It's an interesting topic that I've heard a lot of different points, and I've definitely persuaded the other way, but barely. And I just it's one of those things. And I think, did they do a computer simulation on it? Did they ever do that?
I mean, I haven't looked that into it. But
I'd be curious to see, like if they put all the data into a computer to see what it would spit out.
You can ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, because listen, my understanding of it is there's no weapons, there's no environment manipulation. It's just beast on man in like a big room, bro. And eye gouge.
That's it.
I'm thinking
that's it.
The eardrum, like jabbing some eardrums.
And that only takes 2. Now, if it's head and one-on-one, okay, that's a better debate. But
yeah.
I mean, one-on-one, it's going to take a number of men. Like one-on-one, the gorilla's going to win 8 times out of 10.
Yeah.
But you get 2 people that are fighting for their lives. Well, I don't know. I don't know if they'd be smart enough, but man, you get those survival instincts kicking in and adrenaline. Shoot. But anyways, I know the time's up now, but I appreciate you over, man. It was great to hear about the family. I'm hoping people can learn a little bit about what brought us together and want to come check our gym out. You know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I hope we can do this again down the road.
100%.
This was a lot of fun, and it's definitely been inspiring for me because it's something I want to do too. For that kind of goes with my young gentleman of valor. It's kind of a sidebar from that. I want to hear from men, and I want to have you on one day. But this is a good test run for me to see what this is about.
It's fun. It's just conversation.
It is, yeah. And I love talking, and I love the banter back and forth on things that people don't necessarily agree on, and that's what's great about our country is we should be able to talk and disagree. And then, like with the gorilla thing, I was persuaded it was one way, and then I listened with an open mind, and I think differently on it now, and that's the way we should be with our religion, with our politics. They say don't talk religion, don't talk politics, don't talk all these things.
Talking with the right people.
And but I think that's wrong. I think we should, because that's how you learn, and that's how you can really grow as a human and as a nation. And so this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. We'll see you soon, man.
Yes, sir.